began as a simple piece of digital folklore shared across internet forums. A tall, faceless figure with arms that stretched unnaturally long and wore a dark suit, often seen lurking in forests or shadowy spaces. They called him and initially, he was nothing more than a fictional horror character. Or so they thought, but over time, the line between reality and imagination started to blur. For some, Slenderman was more than just a ghost story, he was real. As his legend grew, strange sightings were reported, and chilling stories surfaced. What started as a harmless tale became something darker, a cultural phenomenon with terrifying consequences. This is the story of how Slenderman escaped the internet and entered our world. Part 1. The Birth of a Legend. Slenderman first appeared on the internet in 2009, on a forum called Something Awful. Users were challenged to create the most terrifying, paranormal images they could, manipulating photos to spark fear. Among the entries, 2 images captivated viewers: grainy, black and white photos of children playing in a park, unaware of a tall, faceless figure lurking behind them. The creator, Eric Nudes, posted these images with eerie captions, suggesting that the photos were found after the children had vanished. The figure, later known as, was unlike any other horror character. He was faceless, lacking any recognizable human features, yet he wore a dark suit and had disturbingly long limbs. The photos quickly gained attention, and Slenderman's haunting presence spread across forums, blogs, and social media. As more people became captivated by his image, they added to his legend. Slenderman was no longer just a manipulated image, he was a being who lurked in shadows, waiting. The simplicity of his appearance, combined with the vague, ominous backstory, turned him into something deeply unsettling. And before long, the internet had embraced him as a modern urban legend. Part 2. From internet myth to viral obsession. What started as a fictional creation became a viral horror icon. Slenderman's image spread like wildfire across the internet, and with each retelling, his story grew darker. People contributed their own experiences, claiming to have seen him in the corner of their vision or lurking in the woods at dusk. He was sighted near playgrounds, hiding behind trees, and appearing in dreams. He was no longer confined to the digital realm. He seemed to be everywhere. With Slenderman came the feeling of being watched, as though he was just beyond sight. Websites, forums, and YouTube channels dedicated to horror content adopted him as a mainstay. People began creating their own Slenderman tales, artwork, and even video games, each story adding another layer to his mythology. The faceless figure in the suit became a metaphor for the fear of the unknown, for the dark spaces we hesitate to look into. But as Slenderman's influence grew, so did the belief that he might not just be a story. Part 3. The Power of Belief. The psychological phenomenon known as the nocebo effect explains how belief can have physical effects, and Slenderman's story became a prime example. The more people believed in him, the more sightings and encounters were reported. For some, Slenderman became not just a fictional character, but a present-sane entity, created by collective fear. He transcended internet folklore, becoming almost like a modern bogeyman. People felt as though they could summon him simply by speaking his name or reading his stories. This wasn't just a few people seeing shadows. Entire online communities contributed to his lore, amplifying his presence until he felt real. Psychologists began to take notice, fascinated by the idea that belief could blur the lines between reality and fiction? Could fear create something tangible? Could belief alone bring a character to life? For Slenderman's followers, the answer was clear. He was real. And in 2014, belief in Slenderman would culminate in a horrifying real-world event. Part 4. The tragic case in Wisconsin. In May 2014, in a quiet suburban town in Wisconsin, two 12-year-old girls led their friend into a forest. They had a dark purpose. They believed that if they offered a sacrifice to they could gain his favor and be allowed to live with him in his mansion deep in the woods. Driven by their conviction, they committed an act that would shock the world. They later confessed, stating that they acted for genuinely believing that he required this to prove their loyalty. The incident horrified the community and raised disturbing questions. How could young girls believe that a fictional character would require such a horrific act? The Wisconsin case became a symbol of how powerful fear and belief could be, especially for impressionable minds. Slenderman, born out of a digital forum, had now driven real-world violence, blurring the line between myth and reality in the most terrifying way possible. Part 5. The aftermath and legal repercussions. The subsequent trial brought the Slenderman legend into the spotlight. The girls' defense argued that they genuinely believed in and their mental state became a central issue. Psychologists examined their minds, trying to understand how two young children could become so consumed by a fictional story. The case was not just about a crime, it became an exploration of how fiction, belief, and fear can impact reality. The girls were eventually committed to psychiatric institutions. For many, the Wisconsin case was a grim warning about the power of belief and the dangers of the digital age. Slenderman's story was no longer just an internet myth. It was a cautionary tale about the influence of stories and the vulnerability of young minds. Part 6. Slenderman's impact on culture. Slenderman's influence didn't end with the Wisconsin case. Instead, it seemed to deepen, embedding him further into the cultural psyche. Films, video games, and novels featured the faceless figure, each adding layers to his chilling image. But the character had taken on a new, darker meaning. He was no longer just a creation of fiction. He had become a symbol of the internet's power to shape our fears and our actions. Slenderman's story became a mirror, reflecting the digital age's ability to twist reality and influence behavior. He was a warning about how stories can take on lives of their own, growing beyond their creators to shape the beliefs and actions of others. Part 7. The psychology behind the fear. Experts in psychology and folklore began to study the Slenderman phenomenon. Why did he become so compelling? Why did people feel a need to believe in him? The answers lay in his simplicity and ambiguity. Slenderman is faceless, stripped of human identity, evoking ancient fears of the unknown. The internet amplified this fear, creating a feedback loop where belief reinforced belief until the character felt real. Some experts suggested that Slenderman's appeal lay in his ability to become whatever people feared most. He was a vessel for collective anxieties, a shadowy figure that represented everything we dread but cannot see. And in that way, he had become a symbol of our deepest fears. Part 8. Slenderman today. Years later, Slenderman remains a prominent figure in internet horror. He is discussed in forums, appears in new media, and continues to inspire stories and sightings. Yet, he is also a cautionary reminder of the internet's power to turn fiction into reality. Slenderman isn't just a story. He's a phenomenon, a testament to how stories can evolve and affect us, taking on lives of their own. Part 9. Stories of the Unknown. Even now, people share their experiences with Slenderman online. Some report seeing him in the woods, others in dreams, and others feel his presence in shadowy corners. Each story adds to the legend, amplifying his power. For many, he remains a figure of fascination and fear, a shadow that haunts both their minds and the edges of their vision. Part 10. A legacy born of fear. In the end, Slenderman is more than a story. He is a symbol of fear's power. His legend is a cautionary tale, reminding us of the delicate balance between reality and imagination. He is a product of our minds and a warning of the influence stories can hold. In Slenderman's world, shadows stretch, reality blurs, and the line between fact and fiction fades. He leaves behind a question: where does imagination end and reality begin?